At 11 o'clock on that day, the Second Corps was halted at Taneytown, which is 13 miles from Gettysburg south, and they're awaiting orders. The men were allowed to make coffee and rest. At between 1 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a message was brought to General Gibbon requiring his immediate presence at the headquarters of General Hancock, who commanded the Corps. I went with General Gibbon, and we rode at a rapid gallop to General Hancock. At General Hancock's headquarters, the following was learned. The First Corps had met the enemy at Gettysburg and had possession of the town. General Reynolds was badly. It was feared mortally wounded. The fight of the First Corps still continued. By General Meade's order, General Hancock was to hurry forward and take command upon the field of all troops there, or which should arrive there. The 11th Corps was near Gettysburg when the messenger who told of the fight left there, and the 3rd Corps was marching up by order on the Emmitsburg Road. General Gibbon, he was not the ranking officer of the 2nd Corps after Hancock was ordered to assume the command of the 2nd Corps. After Hancock was ordered to assume the command of the 2nd Corps. All this was sudden, and for that reason, at least, exciting. But there were other elements in this information that aroused our profoundest interest. The great battle that we had so anxiously looked for during so many days had at length opened, and it was a relief, in some sense, to have these accidents of time and place established. What would be the result? Might not the enemy fall upon and destroy the First Corps before succor could arrive? General Hancock, with his personal staff at about 2 o'clock p.m., galloped off towards Gettysburg. General Gibbon took his place in command of the Corps, appointing me his acting assistant adjutant general. The 2nd Corps took arms at once and moved rapidly towards the field. It was not long before we began to hear the dull booming of the guns, and as we advanced, from many an eminence or opening among the trees, we could look out upon the white battery smoke, puffing up from the distant field of blood and drifting up to the clouds. At these sights and sounds, the men looked more serious than before and were more silent, but they marched faster and straggled less. At about 5 o'clock p.m., as we were riding along at the head of the column, we met an ambulance accompanied by 2 or 3 mounted officers. We knew them to be staff officers of General Reynolds. Their faces told plainly enough what load the vehicle carried. It was the dead body of General Reynolds. Very early in the action, while seeing personally to the formation of his lines under fire, he was shot through the head by a musket or rifle bullet and killed almost instantly. His death at this time affected us much, for he was one of the soldier generals of the army, a man whose soul was in his country's work, which he did with a soldier's high honor and fidelity. I remember seeing him often at the First Battle of Fredericksburg. He then commanded the First Corps, and while Meade's and Gibbon's divisions were assaulting the enemy's works, he was the very beau ideal of the gallant general. Mounted upon a superb black horse, with his head thrown back and his great black eyes flashing fire, he was everywhere upon the field, seeing all things and giving commands in person. He died as many a friend and many a friend, and many a friend, and many a friend, and many a foe to the country have died in this war. Just as the dusk of evening fell from General Meade, the 2nd Corps had orders to halt, where the head of the column then was, and to go into position for the night. The 2nd Division, Gibbon's, was accordingly put in position upon the left of the Taneytown road, its left near the southeastern base of Round Top, of which mountain more Anon, and the right near the road. The 3rd Division was posted upon the right of the road, abreast of the 2nd. The 1st Division in the rear of these two, all facing towards Gettysburg. Arms were stacked, and the men lay down to sleep. Alas, many of them their last, but the great final sleep upon the earth. Late in the afternoon, as we came near the field, from some slightly wounded men we met, and occasional stragglers from the scene of operations in front, we got many rumors and much disjointed information of battle, of lakes of blood, of lakes of blood, of lakes of blood, of rout and panic and undescribable disaster, from all of which the narrators were just fortunate enough to have barely escaped the sole survivors. These stragglers are always terrible liars. About 9 o'clock in the evening, while I was yet engaged in showing the troops their positions, I met General Hancock, then on his way from the front to General Meade, who was back toward Taneytown, and he, for the purpose of having me advise General Gibbon for his information, gave me quite a detailed account of the situation of matters at Gettysburg and of what had transpired subsequently to his arrival. He had arrived and assumed command there just when the troops of the 1st and 11th Corps, after their repulse, were coming in confusion through the town. Hancock is just the man for such an emergency as this. Upon horseback, I think he was the most magnificent-looking general in the whole Army of the Potomac at that time, with a large, well-shaped person, always dressed with elegance. Even upon that field of confusion, he would look as if he was monarch of all he surveyed, and few of his subjects would dare to question his right to command, or do aught else but to obey. His quick eye, in a flash, saw what was to be done, and his voice and his royal right hand at once commenced to do it. General Howard had put one of his divisions, Steinwehr, with some batteries, in position upon a commanding eminence at the cemetery, which, as a reserve, had not participated in the fight of the day, and this division was now, of course, steady. Around this division the fugitives were stopped, and the shattered brigades and regiments, as they returned, were formed upon either flank and faced toward the enemy again. A show of order, at least, speedily came from chaos. The rout was at an end. The 1st and 11th Corps were in line of battle again, not very systematically formed, perhaps, in a splendid position, and in a condition to offer resistance, should the enemy be willing to try them. These formations were all accomplished long before night. Then some considerable portion of the 3rd Corps, General Sickles, came up by the Amherstburg Road and was formed to the left of the Taneytown Road on an extension of the line that I have mentioned. And all the 12th Corps, General Slocum, arriving before night, the divisions were put in position to the right of the troops already there, to the east of the Baltimore Pike. The enemy was in the town and behind it and to the east and west, and appeared to be in strong force and was jubilant over his day's success. Such was the posture of affairs as evening came on of the 1st of July. General Hancock was hopeful and in the best of spirits. And from him I also learned that the reason for halting the 2nd Corps in its present position was that it was not then known where, in the coming fight, the line of battle would be formed, up near the town, where the troops then were, or further back towards Taneytown. He would give his views upon this subject to General Meade, which were in favor of the line near the town, the one that was subsequently adopted, and General Meade would determine. The night before a great pitched battle would not ordinarily, I suppose, be a time for much sleep for generals and their staff officers. We needed it enough, but there was work to be done. This war makes strange confusion of night and day. I did not sleep at all that night. It would perhaps be expected on the eve of such great events that one should have some peculiar sort of feeling, something extraordinary, some great arousing and excitement of the sensibilities and faculties commensurate with the event itself. This certainly would be very poetical and pretty, but so far as I was concerned, and I think I can speak for the Army in this matter, there was nothing of the kind. Men who had volunteered to fight the battles of the country, had met the enemy in many battles, and had been constantly before them, as had the Army of the Potomac, were too old soldiers, and long ago too well had weighed chances and probabilities to be so disturbed now. No, I believe the Army slept soundly that night, and I'm glad the men did, for they needed it. At midnight, General Meade and staff rode by General Gibbon's headquarters on their way to the field, and in conversation with General Gibbon, General Meade announced that he had decided to assemble the whole army before Gettysburg and offer the enemy battle there. The 2nd Corps would move at the earliest daylight to take up its position. At 3 o'clock of the 2nd of July, the sleepy soldiers of the Corps were aroused. Before 6, the Corps was up to the field and halted temporarily by the side of the Taneytown Road, upon which it had marched while some movements of the other troops were being made to enable it to take position in the order of battle. The morning was thick and sultry, the sky overcast with low, vapory clouds. As we approached, all was astir upon the crests near the cemetery, and the work of preparation was speedily going on. Men looked like giants there in the mist, and the guns of the frowning batteries so big that it was a relief to know that they were our friends. Without a topographical map, some description of the ground and location is necessary to a clear understanding of the battle. With the sketch I have rudely drawn, without scale or compass, I hope you may understand my description. The line of battle as it was established on the evening of the 1st and morning of the 1st and morning of the 2nd of July was in the form of the letter U, the troops facing outwards, and the cemetery, which is at the point of the sharpest curvature of the line, being due south of the town of Gettysburg. Round Top, the extreme left of the line, is a small, woody, rocky elevation, a very little west of south of the town, and nearly 2 miles from it. The sides of this are in places very steep, and its rocky summit is almost inaccessible. A short distance north of this is a smaller elevation called Little Round Top. On the very top of Little Round Top, we had heavy rifled guns in position during the battle. Near the right of the line is a small woody eminence named Culp's Hill. 3 roads come up to the town from the south, which near the town are quite straight, and at the town the external ones unite, forming an angle of about 60 or more degrees. Of these, the farthest to the east is the Baltimore Pike, which passes by the east entrance to the cemetery. The farthest to the west is the Emmitsburg Road, which is wholly outside of our line of battle, but near the cemetery is within 100 yards of it. The Taneytown Road is between these, running nearly due north and south by the eastern base of Round Top by the western side of the cemetery, and uniting with the Emmitsburg Road between the cemetery and the town. High ground near the cemetery is named Cemetery Ridge. The 11th Corps, General Howard, was posted at the cemetery. Some of its batteries and troops, actually among the graves and monuments, which they used for shelter from the enemy's fire, is left resting upon the Taneytown Road, extending thence to the east, crossing the Baltimore Pike, and tending thence to the east, crossing the Baltimore Pike, thence bending backwards towards the southeast. On the right of the 11th came the 1st Corps. Now, since the death of General Reynolds, commanded by General Newton, formed in a line curving still more towards the south. The troops of these 2 corps were reformed on the morning of the 2nd in order that each might be by itself and to correct some things not done well during the hasty formations here the day before. To the right of the 1st Corps, and on an extension of the same line, along the crest and down the southeastern slope of Culp's Hill, was posted the 12th Corps, General Slocum, its right, which was the extreme right of the line of the army, resting near a small stream called Rock Run. No changes that I am aware of occurred in the formation of this corps. On the morning of the 2nd Corps, after the brief halt that I have mentioned, moved up and took position, its right resting upon the Taneytown Road at the left of the 11th Corps, and extending the line thence, nearly a half-mile almost due south towards Round Top, with its divisions in the following order, from right to left. The 3rd, General Alex Hayes. The 2nd, Gibbons, General Harrow, temporarily. The 1st, General Caldwell. The formation was in line by brigade in column, the brigade being in column by regiment, with 40 paces interval between regimental lines, the 2nd and 3rd divisions having each one, and the 1st Division 2 brigades. There were 4 brigades in the 1st Division, 2 brigades. There were 4 brigades in the 1st, similarly formed in reserve, 150 paces in the rear of the line of their respective divisions. That is, the line of the corps, exclusive of its reserves, was the length of 6 regiments, deployed, and the intervals between them, some of which were left wide for the posting of the batteries, and consisted of 4 common deployed lines, each of 2 ranks of men, and a little more than 1/3 over in reserve. The 5 batteries, in all 28 guns, were posted as follows. Woodruff's regular 6 12-pound Napoleons brass between the 2 brigades, in line of the 3rd Divisions. In line of the 3rd Division, Arnold's a first rank. 6 3-inch Parrots, rifled, and Cushing's regular 4 3-inch ordnance, rifled, between the 3rd and 2nd Division. Hazards, commanded during the battle by Lieut. Brown B. 1st R. and Roy's NG each 612-pound Napoleon's brass between the 2nd and 1st Division. I have been thus specific in the description of the posting and formation of the Second Corps because they were works that I assisted to perform, and also that the other corps were similarly posted, with reference to the strength of the lines and the intermixing of infantry and artillery. From this, you may get a notion of the whole. The Third Corps, General Sickles, the remainder of it arriving upon the field this morning, was posted upon the left of the Second, extending the line still in the direction of Round Top, with its left resting near Little Round Top, The left of the Third Corps was the extreme left of the line of battle, until changes occurred which will be mentioned in the proper place. The Fifth Corps, General Sykes, coming on the Baltimore Pike about this time, was massed there, near the line of battle, and held in reserve until sometime in the afternoon, when it changed position, as I shall describe. I cannot give a detailed account of the cavalry, for I saw but little of it. It was posted near the wings and watched the roads and the movements of the enemy upon the flanks of the army, but further than this participated but little in the battle. Some of it was also used for guarding the trains, which were far to the rear. The artillery reserve, which consisted of a good many batteries, were posted between the Baltimore Pike and the Taneytown Road, on very nearly the center of a direct line passing through the extremities of the wing. Thus, it could be readily sent to any part of the line. The Sixth Corps, General Sedgwick, did not arrive upon the field until sometime in the afternoon, but it was now not very far away, and was coming up rapidly on the Baltimore Pike. No fears were entertained that Uncle John, as his men called General Sedgwick, would not be in the right place at the right time. These dispositions were all made early, I think before 8 o'clock in the morning. Skirmishers were posted well out all around the line, and all put in readiness for battle. The enemy did not yet demonstrate himself. With a look at the ground now, I think you may understand the movements of the battle. From Round Top by the line of battle, round to the extreme right, I suppose, is about 3 miles. From this same eminence to the cemetery extends a long ridge or hill, more resembling a great wave than a hill, however, with its crest, which was the line of battle, quite direct between the points mentioned. To the west of this, that is, towards the enemy, the ground falls away by a very gradual descent across the Emmitsburg Road, and then rises again, forming another ridge, nearly parallel to the first, but inferior in altitude, and something over 1,000 yards away. A belt of woods extends partly along this second ridge, and partly farther to the west, at distances of from 1,000 to 1,300 yards away from our line. Between these ridges and along their slopes, that is, in front of the Second and Third Corps, the ground is cultivated and is covered with fields of wheat, now nearly ripe with grass and pastures, with some peach orchards, with fields of waving corn, and some farmhouses, and they're out. Buildings along the Emmitsburg Road. There are very few places within the limits mentioned where troops and guns could move concealed. There are some oaks of considerable growth along the position of the right of the Second Corps, a group of small trees, sassafras and oak in front of the right of the Second Division of this Corps also, and considerable woods immediately in front of the left of the Third Corps, and also to the west of and near Round Top. From this, the ground falls quite abruptly to the town, the nearest point of which is some 500 yards away from the line, and is cultivated and checkered with stone fences. The same is the character of the ground occupied by and in front of the left of the First Corps, which is also on a part of Cemetery Ridge. The right of this corps and the whole of the 12th are along Culp's Hill and in woods, and the ground is very rocky and in places in front precipitous, a most admirable position for defense from an attack in front, where on account of the woods, no artillery could be used with effect by the enemy. Then these last three mentioned corps had, by taking rails, by appropriating stone fences, by felling trees, and digging the earth, during the night of the 1st of July, made for themselves excellent breastworks, which were a very good thing indeed. The position of the 1st and 12th Corps was admirably strong. Therefore, within the line of battle is an irregular basin, somewhat woody and rocky in places, but presenting few obstacles to the moving of troops and guns from place to place along the lines, and also affording the advantage that all such movements, by reason of the surrounding crests, were out of view of the enemy. On the whole, this was an admirable position to fight a defensive battle. Good enough, I thought, when I saw it first, and better, I believe, than could be found elsewhere in a circle of many miles. Evils, sometimes at least, are blessings in disguise. For the repulse of our forces and the death of Reynolds on the 1st of July, with the opportune arrival of Hancock to arrest the tide of fugitives and fix it on these heights, gave us this position. Perhaps the position gave us the victory. On arriving upon the field, General Meade established his headquarters at a shabby little farmhouse on the left of the Taneytown road, the house nearest the line, and a little more than 500 yards in the rear of what became the center of the position of the Second Corps, a point where he could communicate readily and rapidly with all parts of the army. The advantages of the position, briefly, were these. The flanks were quite well protected by the natural defenses there, round top up the left and a rocky, steep, untraversable ground up the right. Our line was more elevated than that of the enemy. Consequently, our artillery had a greater range and power than theirs. On account of the convexity of our line, every part of the line could be reinforced by troops having to move a shorter distance than if the line were straight. Further, for the same reason, the line of the enemy must be concave, and consequently longer, and with an equal force thinner, and consequently longer, and with an equal force thinner, and so weaker than ours. Upon those parts of our line which were wooded, neither we nor the enemy could use artillery. But they were so strong by nature, aided by art, as to be readily defended by art, as to be readily defended by a small against a very large body of infantry. When the line was open, it had the advantage of having open country in front. Consequently, the enemy here could not surprise, as we were on a crest, which, besides the other advantages that I have mentioned, had this. The enemy must advance to the attack up an ascent, and must therefore move slower and before coming upon us, longer under our fire, as well as more exhausted.